Following the president's false statements last night, a group of former Republican U.S. attorneys who have previously endorsed Joe Biden released a statement which reads in part, quote, "Unfounded allegations of fraud and threats to initiate litigation aimed at stopping the vote count are clearly inappropriate and have the potential to undermine the rule of law as it applies to our electoral process. Moreover, for any candidate, let alone the President of the United States, to claim victory without justification before each and every vote is counted is imprudent and irresponsible." Our guest tonight, Marcos Jimenez, signed that letter. Thank you so much for being with us this evening, Mr. Jimenez. Now, why was it necessary to come out with that statement?
Well, we've been impressed by the incredible voter turnout and the hard work of the election officials throughout this country. And against that backdrop, for this president to make baseless allegations of massive voter fraud, like he did, by the way, right after he was initially elected. He claimed there was massive voter fraud when Hillary Clinton was defeated because she won the popular vote. He was upset by that, so he claimed massive voter fraud. And that was unsubstantiated. So we had to speak out because we think this is an attack on our election process, our democracy, and on the voters themselves.
Okay, Marcos, we should point out that you served under former President George W. Bush. I imagine you're a Republican in good standing. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Let me ask you about the charges that the president is making. It seems to me like he's saying there is cheating in the states he's losing, but no cheating in the states he won. Do you see a coherent legal argument here?
No, we don't. Look, I think that it's obviously ridiculous for the president to say that the votes should not be counted in the states that he's losing, but they should continue to be counted in the states that he's winning. So there is no coherent argument. Yes, I was a Republican. I am now an independent because I did not agree with the party's selection of Donald Trump. But I still identify in many ways with the Republican Party and believe in many of its positions. But this is not a Republican issue. It's not a Democrat issue. This is a democracy issue. The votes should be counted. The electoral process should be allowed to continue. And for a president to say, I'm going to file lawsuits all over the place, and so far he's done it in 3 states, is really simply the wrong way for us to conduct an election. And, you know, he has also said he thinks he's going to get the Supreme Court to stop it. And most election law experts believe that that's just simply not going to happen. The Supreme Court, and I'll say this, David Boies, who was Vice President Gore's lawyer in the historic Bush v. Gore cases, in which I also participated, said that the Supreme Court does not want to be perceived as stepping in a partisan way in the election. And I firmly believe that to be the case. The Supreme Court is not going to stop this election. It's not going to stop the counting of the votes. And at the end of the day, Joe Biden has multiple pathways to the presidency. The most serious case that's going on right now involves Pennsylvania. And that case is already at the Supreme Court. And by the way, the Supreme Court of the United States decided not to stop the absentee ballots that are involved in that case. Those ballots are being segregated and set aside. But the voters relied on that. They voted by mail in Pennsylvania. But even if Donald Trump wins that case, which I highly doubt, he doesn't necessarily need Pennsylvania to win the election. If he wins the other contested states, I'm sorry, I said Donald Trump, I meant Joe Biden. If Joe Biden wins the other states where he's ahead without Pennsylvania, he has the 270 electoral votes that are needed to be the next president. So this strategy of suing in every state to try to stop every state's votes from being counted and initiate litigation in Georgia and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan is just a losing strategy for the president. So we urge him to just stop and to let the electoral process play out in a fair way.
And Marcos, very quickly, because we are running out of time, but we've been reaching out to our senators, Republicans, also local leaders, elected Republicans here in South Florida, trying to get their response specifically to what the president has been saying these last couple of days. Are you surprised that some of them aren't saying anything?
No, I'm not surprised because, like we said in our letter, there is no basis for his reckless allegation that there's massive voter fraud going on. That's just simply not true. It's just not happening.
But wait a minute, let me interrupt you. But when you hear Lindsey Graham, what he said now that the president should fight for this and kind of giving oxygen to the president's arguments here, will we ever have high-level Republicans speak out the way you are?
Well, look, I think some high-level Republicans have spoken out. Senators and members of the House of Representatives who are Republicans have disavowed the president's comments and have said, look, the election process should continue and the votes should be counted. And I think that more and more Republicans are going to come around to that point of view because we're not talking about, like I said, partisanship. We're talking about the way we elect our presidents and the way we've been doing it since this republic was founded. And for a sitting president of the United States to attack that process because he is losing is really, truly dangerous for our democracy.
Marcos Jimenez, unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there. Thanks so much for your insight tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.